Greetings everyone, welcome back to my little smallholding here in County Sligo. It's early July, it's about 8:30 in the morning, and today I'm going to attempt to film a day in my life here at Mossy Bottom. This, I think, is one of the most requested videos I've ever had, though I cannot promise that it will be entertaining. There'll be plenty of interaction with the animals, a bit of gardening, maybe some restoration work in my granary later on, and I'm hoping in the evening to begin filming a YouTube video, which will also be a YouTube video, of course, will then film me filming. Yeah. It's early, and despite living on what most people would call a farm, I'm definitely not a morning person, but I think all will make sense as we progress through the day. Just stick with me. So the first thing I always do in the morning is tend to the animals. Some need feeding, some just need letting out of their enclosures, and it takes me a while to do this, so I always like to go armed with a very large mug of tea, made from my own fresh leaves, of course, in this case spearmint. And the first thing to do if you move to a small holding is invest in a really big mug. First up, we have my two baby Abercott Ranger ducklings, which look really big, but they're actually only about 2 months old. Ducks grow really quickly. And they're in there with a cuckoo Moran chick, a chicken chick, which happened to be born on the same day. It hatched exactly the same time, so I put them in together. And they're in this small enclosure temporarily to allow them to toughen up a bit before they get introduced to their respective flocks. Ducky. There you go. Each of the rabbit tractors gets moved onto fresh grass, which, as you will see, is my morning squat routine. If it's a warm day, I open up the polytunnel doors because the temperature can quickly build into the high 30s and even 40s during the summer, which isn't good for some of the plants in there. It seems quite overcast today, but it's actually really warm, very muggy. Next we have my flock of chickens, which live in this area behind me, and you can see their chicken coop, which was an old rusting cattle trailer that I converted into a chicken coop last year, and I'm really pleased with it. I've actually got loads of footage of that process, so I'm going to make a video for you at some point when I get round to it. Back to the chickens though, the morning is when they get their layers pellets, which contain all the nutrients, things like calcium, that they need to keep laying eggs. And of course, egg laying is the main reason that I keep chickens here at Mossy Bottom. I'm also going to give them some brassicas, in this case some kale, which has gone to flower and to seed from the previous year's crop. And I deliberately leave my brassicas in the ground over the winter for two reasons. First of all, to create chicken feed. The seeds are full of protein. And the other reason is to create an abundant nectar source for pollinators, especially bees, which adore them during the spring and early summer. People often ask me if the chickens can escape because the fence looks really low. The answer is yes, they can, and they often do, but they have no real desire to leave this area. And if they do escape, normally they just spend the rest of the day running around the outside of the enclosure, trying to get back in where the other chickens are. Normally in the morning I pull lots of grass from weedy areas and around vegetable plots and throw it into my rabbits, but you can see they've just moved from the area they were in my rabbit warren video from a month or so ago to the original area that they started in, which is now regrown with lots of grass, and the new area is now barren and needs some time to recover. So they don't need extra grass this morning, there's plenty in there to keep them going. And then we come to the most outspoken residents of Mossy Bottom, Fatso and Titch, my cooney pigs. who you probably heard baying in the background like wolves awaiting their breakfast while I was doing the other animals. And their job, as you folks already know, is to plough the soil ready for next year's crop of vegetables. But pigs being pigs will always take the lazy option in life for very good evolutionary reasons, actually. So if there's a way to get food without working for it, then they'll learn very quickly to exploit that. So if you want your pigs to plough, as I do, you can't overfeed them, but equally they must get everything they need nutritionally to be healthy, which today means a small bowl of oats and barley and pig nuts for each of them. And the wooden contraption which I feed them in, you won't have seen that in my dedicated Kuni video because I've since made this, is a way to separate them so I can stop Fatso, the big ginger pig, who eats at 100 miles an hour, from stealing the food from Titch, the little black one, who likes to take things easy when eating. I think she might be part tortoise, to be honest. I've had to make various modifications to this contraption because Fatso learnt to lift it up, and you probably saw that there, from the back and push her way in spite of it weighing about 50 kilograms. It's very heavy, which is about 2/3 of my body weight. So Titch is effectively sealed in now to her great pleasure, allowing her to finish her breakfast in peace, if you can call it that, with another pig rocking and rolling your enclosure as you eat. I suppose it's a relative term. Next we have another rabbit tractor to move. There's 4 in total, spread out all across my land. And I think you can see behind there as well, the veggies are doing really well. This is my winter plot, so it has things like beetroot and sprouts, all my brassicas, purple sprouting broccoli, kale. I think I'm going to have another bumper crop this year. It's looking good. Next we have my adult Abercott Ranger ducks, which sleep overnight in their duck house and in a morning cannot wait to get back to their pool. At this time of year I can't free range them, unfortunately, because the vegetable plants are still too young and tender and the ducks damage them. I have tried, but that's only for a month or so more before I can let them out to start murdering slugs. There are now 3 ducks living in this area. My original 2 adults, called Curtis and Patsy, and also an adolescent Abercott Ranger called Ducko. I wasn't feeling very creative that day. Unfortunately, ducks are very territorial, and Patsy hasn't taken too fondly to the introduction of Ducko. I don't think Curtis particularly minds. That's the adult male, the drake. But Patsy is very protective of her ensuite swimming pool. She's not physically aggressive to Ducko, but she does quack very loudly whenever the 2 get close. It's a large enough enclosure though, with plenty of space so they can gradually get used to each other. And I did begin this introduction by having Ducko in a separate enclosure within this enclosure with a separate house. So I have taken it slowly, and things are definitely improving. Of course, eventually the other 2 Abercott Ranger ducks will move in here as well. But if you're thinking about getting ducks yourself one day, that's definitely something to bear in mind. Ducks will forage naturally in the grass during the day, and it's amazing how much food they can actually gather doing that. But I also collect slugs for them from my vegetable areas, and I love the idea of connecting the dots, so taking away something that damages my vegetables and turning it into a resource which feeds my ducks, which then lay eggs. I also, of course, top up their daily diet with special pellets made for ducks and geese. And if you want to tame a duck, this is definitely the best way to do it, because they learn very quickly to associate you with food instead of running away from you. Ducks are often quite timid, so you do have to spend some time with them when they're young to sort of train them to be comfortable around people. So you start with the food in the grass, and then once they get used to that, you introduce your hand with some food on it. And then once they get used to that, you can move your hand around in their presence. And eventually they'll come to you and they'll feed from your hand, and even try and mount your arm. Lovely. Nothing wrong with you, is there, duck? Here you go, a bit more. Final squat of the day. Order has been restored. I also feed the cats, and Moss, of course. I'm trying to feed the cats a lot in the morning so that they have to sleep the whole rest of the day to digest it all. The idea is to try and prevent them from hunting when the birds are active, particularly in the spring and summer months. And of course I want them to be then very active at night when the rodents are about, munching on my strawberries and my other crops. So far it seems to be working pretty well. So at this point I usually go for a quick run in the forest before breakfast. Admittedly though, I'd be less inclined to do that if it was winter, but at this time of year, with Moss for company, it's just a lovely way to start the day and kind of wake up a bit. And the best thing is, it doesn't matter how you look, because nobody's going to see you in a forest. Moss dog, what are you doing in there? So I've cooled down after my run, had some breakfast. It's now about 10:30, another mug of tea to keep me going. And now I'm going to water everything in my polytunnel. And this is something I do usually once every 2 days. I like to really soak the roots and let them dry out a bit the next day. It seems to produce better results, for me at least, than watering small amounts daily. And the only watering I really do here at Mossy Bottom is in the tunnel during the summer months, because it rains so much outside that you really don't need to water your crops. It's one of the few advantages really to the Irish climate, and it's really good for things like brassicas, which require lots of moisture for leaf growth. I probably will set up a drip irrigation system in the polytunnel at some point just to save time, because watering everything in there takes about an hour. But for the moment, you know, my watering cans do the job. Okay folks, it's about 12 o'clock and now I'm going to do some restoration work here in my granary, which I'm aiming to complete this summer, hopefully. Many of you ask how things are going with the restoration of the cottage. Well, it's currently full of all my tools, equipment, animal feed, human feed, everything else I own in the entire world. Bear in mind that my caravan is tiny, so there's just no storage space in there whatsoever. So my aim has always been to turn this 100-year-old granary into a workshop and also a storage space in order to then move everything in from the cottage into here so that I can really start work on the next stage of the cottage restoration. But these things don't happen quickly, that's just the way it is. I've already replaced the roof in here, including doing all the timber work and rebuilding the stone walls up to the level of the roof because they'd all degraded and the stone was coming out. I've repointed the stonework internally. That was a huge job, all had to be done by hand. The walls still need cleaning, as I say, and there's some holes which I need to fill. But apart from that, I'm almost at the point where I can put down a new floor. There's one job to do though before that, and that's remove this internal wall, which, there you go, was built at a later date to the rest of the granary, probably to create separation for an animal stall. But the stonework in this internal wall is really badly made, and it's leaning to one side, so it really has to come down. And once that's done, I'm going to lay a new floor, build a mezzanine level, make my own wooden windows and doors, that'll be fun, equip the building with electricity, build a rainwater collector attached to the roof with some tanks on that side, and that'll allow me to plumb in a washing machine and sink down here, hopefully. And I was given a beautiful potbelly stove by my neighbour, which I'm going to attach in here to keep me warm on those chilly nights when I'm working away on various projects. And the best part of all is I get to move all my tools in here and set this place up as a workshop. I can't wait to do that. One of the things that consistently surprises me here at Mossy Bottom and living this type of life in general is how long it takes to achieve the things that on paper you expect to happen a lot quicker. It's very important, I think, and this is something I've embraced early on in this new life, to be happy right now, to create a life that is fulfilling in the immediate term and that you can sustain for however long it takes to finish those big projects, rather than putting your life and your happiness on hold while you desperately try to finish something. And in order to do that, you have to find joy in all the small victories in life. Each stone you put down, each bite of each meal that comes from your garden. If you can find meaning in those things rather than constantly seeking something bigger, something distant, then you can really live in the present and let the future take care of itself, which it invariably does, especially if you're happy. And I should add, I am a worrier by nature, like most introverts, so it's been quite hard for me to make that adjustment. It's definitely not been easy, but I really think it's been key to me finding happiness here. Whew. So that's the wall gone. I think it's about 2 o'clock, so definitely time I had some lunch. But after lunch, I will come back in here and do another few hours, taking some of this stone and using it to fill the holes in the wall that have been left by bits of stone falling out. And the rubble which you saw me taking out, which is mostly lime concrete, I will use to fill the gaps in the floor, to infill those holes, so that when I lay a new floor, I don't need quite as much material. So nothing will go to waste. Any of the stone that's left over, I'll take out and I'll save for future projects, of which there definitely will be some. Okay, time for lunch. Okay, so one or two of you have requested in the comments that I should do some cooking with my homegrown produce on these videos. And I've thought about it a bit. Of course, it's a big part of my life, cooking with my own food. I would say about 60% of what I eat is from things that I've grown or produced myself. So it's definitely an important aspect of being self-sufficient. The problem is, here's the catch, I would say that I'm a terrible cook. I'm much better at growing food than I am at cooking it. It's definitely not my forte in life. And part of the reason for that is that I'm a super taster, which is a real thing. Go and have a look on the internet. It basically means I don't like strong flavors. I hate beer. I hate coffee. Can't stand the stuff. Anything that has that really strong, overpowering flavor, I just don't like it. And I also don't like combinations of flavors. I like to keep things simple and subtle. And that's the reason that I keep saying in those comments that I don't grow garlic. It's just too overpowering for me. I don't like the taste or the flavor of it at all. Incidentally, if you do like garlic and you intend to move to the west of Ireland, then it grows fantastically well here. It's one of the easiest things to grow. The same is true of onions. That whole kind of family, the alliums, are really easy to grow here. But I am going to do some cooking for you today so you can see the kind of things that I eat and the produce that I use. I'm going to keep it simple. This would be what I would have at this time of year pretty much every day for lunch. And on that subject, my diet very much does depend on the time of year. Of course, I only have an acre of usable land here, so potatoes are really the only carbohydrate crop that I can grow. So I do have to buy bread and oats and other carb staples like rice if I want them. If I were to get more land one day, and it definitely won't happen before all the buildings are restored, but if I were to, then there are 3 things that I'd love to do. One is grow spelt, because I love spelt bread. The second is to grow oats for porridge and other oat things, and also as animal feed. And the third is to keep goats for milk, cheese, butter, and just the pleasure of their company. Back to today's lunch though, I'm going to have poached eggs from my own chickens on toast with freshly picked spinach leaves. This is the perpetual spinach, by the way, that I mentioned in my top 10 veggies to grow in the winter video. A handful of red currants just to add a sharpness of flavour, and a few mange-tout peas for sweetness as a bit of a side. And after that, a bowl of strawberries to satisfy my sweet tooth. Wow. The key to mange-tout peas being delicious is harvesting them when they're young so they don't get that stringiness. You almost want to pick them before the peas really even fully develop. Leftover eggshells can be broken up and given back to the chickens. Just make sure you break them up, otherwise you're teaching them to cannibalize their own eggs. But yeah, really good for giving them back the nutrients and minerals they need to lay more eggs. So there you have it, folks. Poached eggs on toast with a bed of perpetual spinach and some red currants and a side of mange-tout peas. And look at that for dessert. A Moomin's mug of strawberries. What could be better than that? I'm going to eat. Finally, let me just say, I don't like to rush lunch. I think it's probably my favourite meal of the day. And especially in the summer, I'm a big believer in using that time to recover, ready for a long afternoon and evening of work. I tend to work really late, usually until maybe 8 to 10 o'clock when it starts to get dark. And if I rush lunch, I don't seem to have the stamina to keep going quite as long. So I'll probably take about an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours to cook and eat and relax a bit with my animals and gather my thoughts ready for the afternoon's work. So it's about 6:30. I've done a few more hours work in the granary, and this is actually one of my favourite times of the day to record YouTube videos because my brain has finally kicked into gear, and talking into a camera requires more energy and concentration than you might think. I'd say it's probably harder than knocking walls down, to be honest. Although I do love the creativity involved, I'm usually a wreck by the end of it, and I often wonder if people can tell from the videos when they watch them. After the rabbit warren video, in which I had to stand in one place being chewed on by midges for about an hour, I had to retreat to my meditation stone in the forest, where me and Moss reconnected with a less vicious side of nature. That's one of the great things about summer though, the fact that I can stay out until 9, 10 o'clock and it's still light. Okay, so I'm now going to attempt to film a second YouTube video, and I'm going to try and film me filming that video for this video. as I mentioned at the beginning, bit of a weird inception moment here at Mossy Bottom, but I reckon if I could pull it off, this should look quite good. I'm just on my way back to the caravan to get another battery pack because alas, my phone is about to die. There's also the technical aspects of filming to contend with. Most YouTubers are sat in cozy studios with fixed cameras and microphones and lights perfectly set up. And even then it's a complicated business because batteries can die and mics can fail and camera settings need adjusting. Outside in Rainy Island, with wind and sun and neighbours appearing and aeroplanes flying over and crazy border collies who like to knock tripods over, it's even more challenging. On average, it actually takes me about 3 to 4 hours to film a 20-minute video. And most of that time is getting the angle right and setting things up. I'm not a professional videographer, I should say that, by background, and I don't have sophisticated equipment either. But I do like to produce videos that look reasonably good and kind of showcase what I'm doing here. So I guess I take my time, as with all things. I know some of you have pointed out the technical issues in the comments of past videos. Well, all I can say to that is you should see the content I've had to refilm because my microphone cut out, or my camera ran out of power, or my SD card was full, or my tripod blew over or was knocked over. Or even, and this really happened once, a bird decides to deposit its fertilizer upon my camera lens mid-recording. You'd be amazed the things that can go wrong out here in the west of Ireland when you're trying to film a video. And that happens quite a lot too. Okay folks, it's 3 hours later. I've finished recording the video within this video. Now I need to wrap up this video. It did work out pretty well, I'm quite pleased, but I am pretty exhausted at this point. It's the first time I've ever recorded 2 videos in a single day, so predictably I'm now going to head to the forest with Moss and have a nice long walk for about an hour before it gets dark. And this is really my time to unwind and think and plan for the next day, and of course to burn some of Moss's limitless energy, which would otherwise be focused on trying to herd and corral every single animal here. And I'm sure you've noticed him doing that in previous videos. It's his favourite activity. Even the cats, believe it or not, get herded around by Moss. If you're thinking about getting a border collie yourself, then you will either need sheep, cows, or a never-ending supply of sticks, and not forgetting a very strong arm to throw them with. Okay everyone, it's dusk, which at this time of year is about 10 PM just gone here in Ireland, and the midges are out, they're swarming me. It's time for me to put the animals to bed. It's actually lighter out than it looks on the screen, and so I can see just fine. The rabbits will get an extra scoop. I'm just dodging the midges. They'll get an extra scoop of dried pellets each just to make sure they're not missing out on any nutrients. And the chickens will get shut in their coop just in case fantastic Mr. Fox does show up and somehow outwit Moss. That would be a first. There's no way into that coop when the door's closed. Okay, let's get started before I'm eaten alive. The ducks put to bed. Okay, time to put the chickens to bed. One very naughty cat, did you see that? Sneaking in. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 eggs today. Not bad. The pigs don't get fed at night. They have all their feed in the morning, and they can forage on grass and roots to their heart's content during the day. In fact, I actively want them to do that. But as you can see, they do like to have a good scratch before they go to bed. Good night, piggies. So the ducks are put back in their wooden house with some more food and water for the night. Again, sealed in. Nothing's getting in there without a sledgehammer, believe me. And the boards are 1 inch thick on that duck house, all the way around the floor too. Let's put them back to bed. Oh, no, duck. Okay, we're almost done, just Moss to feed, but first the cats, which get fed in their penthouse apartment at the top of Moss's kennel, and the reason for that is to stop Moss stealing their food. It's the only place that I've worked out I can give them feed that Moss can't get his head into. Let me sneak it in there, there you go. Okay, last but not least, Moss gets to enjoy a nice big bowl of dog biscuits while contemplating the end of another day in doggy paradise. Here you go, Moss. Enjoy. Time for a spot of supper myself, maybe a bit of reading, and then the bliss of sinking into my bed sheets for another night's sleep. Thank you for watching, everyone, and of course, continuing to support the channel in the way that you do. I hope you enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun to make, though predictably exhausting. Wherever you are in the world, take care and bye for now. I also feed the cats and Moss, of course. I'm trying to feed the cats a lot in the familiar sound on these videos. I'm trying to feed the cats in the morning. It's really deja vu, isn't it? Yep. Can't even get one word out. Keep it up, buddy. Keep it up. Just remember, I've got 2 cockerels and I only need 1. Yeah, I'm looking at you. I also feed the cats and Moss, of course, and I'm trying to feed the cats a lot in the morning so that they have to sleep the rest of the day to digest all that food. He's jumped off his rock, he must be done. And that was a joke, by the way, I'm not going to eat him. I also feed the cats and Moss, of course. I'm trying to feed the cats a lot in the morning so that they have to collapse and sleep. I also feed the cats and Moss, of course. I'm trying to feed the cats a lot in the morning so that they have to sleep the rest of the day to digest all that food. The idea is to try and prevent them from hunting when the birds are active, particularly in the spring and summer months when they're nesting. And of course, I want them to then be really active at night when the... You're a you are. Shut the fudge up.